Welcome to the Astrology Academy. I am your guide, and today we open a new door in the study of the natal chart. We are going to read the 12 houses not as a collection of departments, but as a single living story, the story of psychological development, told in 12 chapters. My name for this is the individuation wheel, and it rests on a simple, radical claim. The 12 houses, read in order from the ascendant, describe the same journey that Carl Gustav Jung called individuation. The lifelong process by which a human being becomes, not who they are told to be, but who they actually are. Jung mapped this journey through concepts we now know well: the persona, the shadow, the anima and animus, and finally the self. What astrology contributes is timing, placement, and specificity. Where Jung gave us the psychology, the houses give us the geography of the soul. The ascendant is the door of birth. From that threshold, the wheel unfolds like a spiral of development: identity, resources, communication, roots, creativity, health, relationship, crisis, meaning, vocation, community, and transcendence. In this episode 1 we'll show you the original framework I call the 4 acts of the soul, and a precise reading technique, the house arc analysis, that lets you locate any native on their individuation journey, and tell them, with startling accuracy, which chapter of their life they are living right now. This is not fortune-telling. This is developmental astrology, rigorous, psychological, and verifiable in lived experience. Let us begin with the architecture. The 12 houses form 3 circles of 4. The angular houses, 1, 4, 7, and 10, are the pillars of the ego. They answer the 4 great questions: who am I, where do I come from, whom do I meet, and what do I build? The succedent houses, 2, 5, 8, and 11, are the chambers of consolidation. Here the ego gathers its resources: money, pleasure, power, and friendship. The cadent houses, 3, 6, 9, and 12, are the rooms of reflection. Here the ego makes meaning, learning, service, philosophy, and surrender. Now here is the original insight of the individuation wheel. The 4 angular houses are not 4 separate concerns. They are 4 acts of one play, and between them run the individuation stages. Act 1 is houses 1, 2, and 3, the formation of the persona. The ascendant is the mask we are born wearing, the interface between the self and the world. The second house is what the persona claims as its own, and the third house is the voice of the persona, the first words, the first stories, the first naming of the world. In Jungian terms, this first quadrant is the great work of childhood, constructing a usable self. The child builds a persona that pleases, survives, and belongs. And here is the first shadow: the persona is not the person. Somewhere around the third house, the soul begins to whisper, "Who is speaking when I say I?" That whisper is the signal that Act 2 is approaching. The individuation journey begins the moment we notice the mask is not the face. Act 2 is houses 4, 5, and 6, the encounter with the shadow. The 4th house is the root of the psyche, the foundation laid before memory. Here lives the family story, the inherited emotional soil, and what I call the root shadow. The wound we did not choose, the pattern we absorbed with the air of our first home. Jung called the shadow everything we are not willing to be. The 4th house shows where that shadow was buried. A difficult 4th house, for example, often hides a shadow of unworthiness, a conviction that the foundation itself is unstable. Now watch the genius of the wheel. The 5th house is the creative compensation. When the root shadow is denied, the 5th house erupts: romance, play, art, the child. The 5th house is the psyche trying to heal Act 2's wound through spontaneous expression. This is why people with heavy 5th houses are often brilliant performers who struggle to rest. Their creativity is a lighthouse built over a buried storm. The 6th house completes the act. Here the body speaks its truth: health, routine, service, the daily discipline. Jung said the shadow is often carried in the body, and the 6th house is precisely that, the physical evidence of psychological truth. The original reading technique for this act is what I call the shadow inventory. You examine the 4th, 5th, and 6th houses together and ask 3 questions. What was buried? What is erupting? What is the body saying? When the answers align, you have found the central wound of the first half of life. And here is the liberating rule: the shadow is not the enemy. It is the unclaimed portion of our own power. The fourth house wound, once seen, becomes the fifth house gift, and the sixth house discipline becomes its medicine. Act 3 is houses 7, 8, and 9. The meeting with the anima and the animus. This is the relational stage of individuation. The seventh house is the mirror. Here we project the unintegrated parts of our psyche onto another person, and then, if we are brave, we reclaim them. In the classic tradition, the seventh house is marriage and partnership. In the individuation wheel, it is the first great invitation to see ourselves from outside. The eighth house is the crisis of transformation, shared resources, intimacy, death, and rebirth. If the seventh house is the mirror, the eighth house is what we find when we break the mirror. The terrifying, liberating truth that the other is not our completion, but our teacher. This house rules the deep exchanges, emotional, financial, sexual, where the persona is stripped away. Jung's anima and animus, the inner feminine and inner masculine, are most activated here. The ninth house completes the act as the house of meaning, philosophy, travel, faith, the worldview. After the crisis of the eighth, we do not return to the old beliefs. We build new ones. The ninth house is the quest for a truth large enough to hold our suffering. Here is the original technique of Act 3, which I call the projection audit. List the qualities you most admire in others, and the qualities you most despise. Both lists, Jung taught, are self-portraits. Now locate those qualities in your seventh and eighth houses. The person you marry is the person you have not yet become. The enemy you cannot forgive is the shadow you have not yet integrated. The ninth house then asks the final question of the act. What worldview would be true enough to include both your light and your shadow? Act 4 is houses 10, 11, and 12, the realization of the self. The 10th house is not merely career. In the individuation wheel, it is the vocation of the soul, the contribution the fully realized person makes to the world. The 11th house is the community of the self, the groups, causes, and friendships that reflect our authentic values rather than our persona. And the 12th house is the return to the source, solitude, dream, surrender, the ocean from which the individual emerged and into which the individual dissolves. This is the jungian self. Not the ego, but the whole of which the ego is a part. Here is the completed circle. The first house gives us a persona. The 12th house asks us to release even that. Now, the practice. I call it the house arc analysis, and you can do it for any chart. First, draw the wheel and mark the 4 angles. Second, locate your pivot houses. Any house containing 3 or more planets, or an angular planet. These are your individuation stations, the chapters where your development is concentrated. Third, locate your shadow house, the weakest house in the chart, or the one holding a difficult aspect. This is where your Act 2 work lives. Fourth, find your empty quadrant. The quadrant with no planets is the stage of life you have not yet claimed. And finally, run the progression clock. When a progressed angle or outer planet enters a new house, the soul begins a new act. I have tested this framework against hundreds of charts, and the accuracy is humbling. People do not need predictions. They need a map of where they are. The 12 houses are that map, the individuation wheel, turning from the mask to the self, one chapter at a time. Thank you for watching. In the next episode, we will leave the houses and climb into the fixed stars.